Welcome to the Observe Day podcast, the show where we celebrate the days that matter. From holidays to meaningful observances, we bring you inspiring conversations, stories, and ideas to make each day count. Whether it's raising awareness, learning something new, or simply sparking joy, this is your space to explore the calendar in a whole new way. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I'm excited to share today's observance with you. Let's dive in. On International Yoga Day, we often picture crowded classes and flowing sequences, but at its heart, yoga is about how we move through life with awareness. This guest, Aaron Hines, brings a unique perspective to that conversation, a former collegiate football player turned exercise physiologist and fitness coach. Aaron works primarily with adults over 45 who want to move pain-free and build lasting strength. As a husband, father, and five-time best-selling author, he's also someone who has rebuilt his own life after unexpected setbacks. While he isn't a yoga instructor, his work in mobility, longevity, and mindset overlaps deeply with yoga's core principles. This conversation explores what International Day can mean beyond the mat, especially for those focused on strength, resilience, and aging well. Welcome to the podcast, Aaron.
Hey, thanks very much for having me. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, you work with many adults over 45 who want to move without pain. Was there a moment in your career when flexibility or mobility became just as important to you as strength?
Yeah, I think so. I'm 40, so I mean, it's kind of odd. You would think maybe because I'm working with people
Yeah,
45 and older, but I mean, it comes a time, a point where you have to focus on those movement patterns and flexibility to increase your strength. So I think as we age, some of those things we um, should do or do more of, or usually the things we don't like to do. So
yeah,
I think it's more imperative. It was probably after my college football playing career that it was a little bit more important. But as we get older, it's equally as important, in my opinion, that we should be more flexible, more mobile, so that way we're able to do more, lift more, and kind of live life pain free.
Hmm. Do more, live more, and kind of live life more free. As a former football player, how's your understanding of recovery and mindful movement evolved since your competitive years?
It's a lot better now. In your late teens and early 20s, you think everything is easy and kind of invincible as far as just the training modalities. I didn't have much access to that in my playing career. Our recovery was just resting on the weekends because we knew we had Monday 5 o'clock a.m. workouts. But as I've learned over the years and through college experience and just going to graduate school, the recovery aspect is important, just so you're able
Yeah,
to have that rest recovery, whether it's cold plunging, saunas, massage, all those things play a vital role in that recovery process. So I think now it's more important now that I'm in my 40s, but it's, you need it more than you probably think.
yeah. Wow. I'm curious, you work with 45 people, around the age of 45. Have you ever had a client who was skeptical about practices like yoga or mobility work, just being mobile and all that, but later experienced a shift, after working with
Yeah, I think I've had quite a few actually. It's just a matter of educating them on what the benefits are and why they need it. And I'll be honest, I was a skeptic of like Pilates. I thought it was kind of a waste of time, but
you?
now that I've learned over the years that a lot of my clients who have mobility issues, but also have had like joint replacements, we have found that sending them to Pilates or yoga once or twice a week is vitally important for their increased range of motion, so that way they're able to exercise more efficiently and be in less pain.
Well, you talked about Pilates. I'm curious, why were you skeptical before?
Uh, I think it's just the perception of you're on this machine with a bunch of bands and not really knowing much about it. I've always got to be a skeptic first, and then try to learn my way of around it, or how can it apply to my clients. So I just thought it was a waste of time. You didn't get much out of it, and it was only for women and tiny women who didn't like to lift weights. And I've been proven wrong on that. That it's actually beneficial for all genders, male, female, and for young and old. With that, for just the stabilization, the isometrics that you can do with that. But I think the biggest thing for me was I like to lift heavy weights and do strength training, and I just thought it was a waste. So that was kind of, I will say, dumb on my part. But now that I've I'm more educated now later in life. I think it's just as important, just like yoga. I wasn't really a big fan of yoga, but once I took it 3 or 4 times, it was tough. I got really sore post, 3 or 4 days after, but just to increase range of motion and movement patterns were equally vital for me, but also just for the sake of old injuries that kind of creep up on you over the years. It's helpful to have that increased range of motion, and you got to try new things every now and then.
Yeah. Well, you since we're talking about being skeptical, what are some misconceptions people in the strength training world sometimes have about yoga, Pilates, and other mobility work?
I think the biggest thing is it's a waste of time and you're not gonna get much out of it. Um, and that's probably true for a lot of things if you don't really educate yourself or also learn how to do it properly. Because it can seem to be a waste because I think as human beings, we all want the instant gratification of trying something different and new and want ultimate satisfaction of feeling better or having more flexibility. And it doesn't always happen that way. And for me, I like to educate my clients on trying to play the long game, try something for at least 90 days. And if you really don't like it or if it's not working, then maybe try something else. So I think that's one of the biggest, I don't say misconceptions, or just things that it's hard to convince people they need it, but also they have to stick to it for more than like 2 weeks before it can actually work. And I find that with anything with health and fitness. You try something, you don't get the results you want, so people tend to quit. That's why here in the US, we like to say New Year's Eve is kind of your New Year's resolution. And within about 2 weeks, everybody's already quit and moved on and
Yeah.
either quit the resolution or they found something else to spend their time on.
Yeah. Well, or they just forget that they set a resolution in the first place. And then
Yeah,
at the end
yeah,
of the
that's
year, they're like, oh, yeah, that's true. Oh, yeah, I did say I was going to do this. What happened? I
yeah.
just don't know.
It's usually like a lack of, planning on their part, and also just a matter of, like, I think there's also so much stuff out there on social media, and there's all the influencers out there, that not everybody understands what can be beneficial for them because they look at something and go, I should try this or I should buy that because if I buy this and use this, then I'm going to I'm going to lose 10 pounds or it's going to make me feel better. So I think just in general, people have to do their own research and education to figure out what's going to be the best thing for them and kind of move forward with their health and fitness journey that way.
Well, we've talked about 4 to 5 year olds around that age. Well, I want us to dial it down a bit. As a father, how do you think about modeling healthy movement and mindfulness for your kids?
That's interesting you asked me that because my kids just started working out at my facility
Okay.
last week. My kids are 9 and 7, and you always try to encourage them to be to get outside and move and push ups, sit ups, or maybe some squats or something like that. But sometimes it's not always the right time or the right place for them for that. So um,
Before we dive deeper, I'd love to invite you to join the Observe Day newsletter. Every week, I send you highlights of upcoming observances, creative ways to celebrate, and behind the scenes extras from the shows. It's the perfect way to stay inspired and never miss a meaningful moment. Sign up today at observeday.com/join. That is observeday.com/join. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
we're going back for week number 2, hopefully this week, for them to come in, learn how to, do push-ups properly, how to do lunges and the fine motor pattern movements of, younger kids need to. Um, and it wasn't forced. It's just one of those things that I encouraged and they know they need it because playing sports, sometimes they feel slower or they're, winded easily or they're not as strong as they need to be.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a slow and steady process for them. It's not forced just because I've been doing it since I was 16. It's just a matter of like, let's try it. And if you like it, great. If not, then maybe we'll find something else you can still have fun with and get stronger and move as a kid. Because as parents, I think it's easy for us to kind of tell our kids they need to do something, but sometimes it's easier for somebody else to kind of guide them and show them the way. They listen a little bit better that way sometimes. But that's kind of where I'm at with my kids. We're gonna try it and hopefully they stick to it. And if not, we'll try something else to get them in shape.
Yeah. In your experience, what happens physically and mentally when people focus only on performance and neglect the recovery or mobility?
I think it offsets kind of the mental track of like you don't get the I think it's maybe the frustration of they're not getting the results they need as quickly as they need. Just because they only focus on one dimension of fitness. And that's easy too because I think some of the things that, the flexibility and the mobility work and like the yoga, Pilates, and all the other things you can do to increase your range of motion, people just don't like to do it because it's not real flashy. It's not the physique type stuff. You can get stronger by doing it. It's just it seems like it's more of the high reps, more of the toning aspect of I would say not really bodybuilding, but you're really getting more of the triceps and biceps and the shoulder sculpting in that way. So sometimes I feel like I don't know, it's tough. It's tough with that, finding out what they can stick to and what'll motivate them for that. Because I've had clients come in and they've tried the high intensity interval training, they've tried yoga, they've tried Pilates, they've tried the CrossFit, they've tried everything, and they just can't seem to make up their mind what they really want out of their health and fitness. So they'll
Yeah.
try something for a month, they'll quit, they'll try something else for a month and quit. So they really don't stick to a program or a plan. And I think that can mess with your mental state because there's a lot of things going on with that. If you're just dabbling and doing a little bit of everything, you're not really focusing on one aspect of what you can really get good at.
You know, yoga often emphasizes longevity over aesthetics, and it seems as though fitness nowadays is just about aesthetics. How do you look, rather than being fit and being able to move easily and all that. How does that align with your work helping adults over 45?
So we do kind of a combination of a lot, not necessarily the yoga, well, specifically yoga, but just we spend about probably 10 to 15 minutes of our sessions with the movement patterns, which we may go from the ground or a standing position for movement patterns like bird dogs or dead bugs or push-ups or just some flexibility movements to increase that range of motion before we get into the strength training. And I think that's what I have found to work best with my clientele because if you jump straight into the resistance, as you know, as you get stronger, things become tighter and stiffer. And if you don't have that mobility, you can also have the increased risk of injury, and that's what we're trying to mitigate in our strength training programs is reduce the risk of injury, get stronger, more mobile, and be flexible so that way our adults can live life pain free, but also play with their grandkids, go on a 14 or 21 day hike through the Appalachian Mountains, go on a 1 month trip overseas or what have you and do the things they need to without having to stop or cancel or those type of things. So I
Yeah,
think those play a huge role for that. So I like to say we're going to play the long game in health and fitness, not just the here and now.
the long game of health and fitness, not just now, not just tomorrow, but long game.
Yeah.
And because the way social makes it, the media makes it is like, oh yeah, you have to like have six packs and all that. I'm like, it's beyond that. You have to be healthy, you have to be fit, you have to be able to move, play with your grandkids and things like that.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think that's what the fitness influencers don't tell you. They want, or just the on the hits the fitness now is you want instant gratification, you want the big biceps, you want a six pack abs by the end of the week, and it just doesn't happen.
yeah. I'm curious, what do elite athletes and everyday adults have in common when it comes to needing balance between strength and restoration?
That's a great question. They both
Thank
need, yeah, they both need the kind of the equal parts of that, right? So it's more of the cardiovascular aspect to stay in shape, but also the flexibility aspect with that. As we as we age, our muscle mass starts to decrease.
Yeah,
The specifics on that, I think it's at least 3%, maybe a little bit more than that after the age of 30. But if we don't use it, we lose it type thing. So you have to be strong. You have to lift heavy weights, just like our athletes, because if athletes aren't getting stronger and faster and more explosive, they're less likely to make it to the next level. There's a lot of overlap with that with the adults 45 and up and the athletes. It's just a different style of programming for those. So some of those things can be equally as beneficial, but you just have to know who you're working with, what time, what place, and what's going to be the most beneficial for each person.
Oh, yeah. In your work, you talk about great traits in high performance. How does slowing down something yoga encourages actually support resilience rather than weaken it?
Yeah, so it's fine kind of getting the and what I have found is just finding the flow, but also really feeling the movement as opposed to just trying to rush through it. So over time, you can actually think or more of a mental side of it of what's actually working, why it's working, and so that way, when you know when an exercise feels off, you immediately know how to recorrect it or to find a different position that lift to actually feel the muscles working over time. So, sometimes you rush through it, you don't get the most benefit for that or for the exercise. You're just trying to get it done. So, thinking about it mentally, of why we're doing what we're doing, what muscle group is actually working, and actually going through the full range of motion will help long term more than anything else. So, slowing it down, thinking about it first, as opposed to just being the first one to get done, is kind of the name of the game with that.
Yeah. Earlier we talk about in today's culture, fitness can feel fast, competitive, image driven, rather than being healthy, being mobile. And why? How did we get here?
I think that's a that's a that's a tough one, but I think it's just a persona of um, people on phones and the social media influencers and people telling you what you have to do and how you're supposed to look. I know a lot of people who may not look like the quote unquote average fitness person, but overall they can do a lot more
Yeah.
than meets the eye for that. But they're also a lot healthier than some of those individuals. So I think it's just the perception. Especially here in the US of like you have to look a certain way, be a certain way, and sometimes it's more of like a status quo of if you don't look this way, then you're not equal. And I think that's a wrong way to look at it
Yeah.
because there's a lot of people who seem to be really healthy, but they're dropping over. At 23, 24, 25 because they're using a lot of extra supplementation or they're pushing their body over the limits or they just have poor habits. So
Yeah.
looking at somebody on the surface is really deceiving. So I mean, finding out more than that, I think, is going to be the best thing for people. And that's I think for me, that's what in my 20s. It's always like you have to look a certain way and be a certain way and do certain exercises at the gym, or if you're not, you're not as cool, right? And I think now it's probably a little bit of that too, but sometimes it's more about how you feel, what the
Mm.
numbers read when you go get your physical, what your blood pressure is, what your cholesterol is. Because some people look, like I said, look really healthy on the surface, but when you do their blood lipid panels, they're train wreck.
Yeah.
Uh, I think it's a lot of that. It's magazines, social media, TV, maybe. It's a lot of those things combined. Of you've got to look a certain way and be a certain way just to be healthy.
You gotta look a certain way rather than feel and be healthy. For what feels missing from how we publicly celebrate wellness observances like this. Days like International Yoga Day, fitness days, and all the different holidays that promote awareness for, being fit and, exercising and all that. What feels missing how these awareness campaigns are usually celebrated and all that? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I think for most like for the it's all about I think they push it on like the feel good. You gotta feel good. You gotta eat for the celebrations, you gotta have these type of foods, all those
Yeah.
different things. And when you look at the from the commercial side of it, everybody looks happy, but what they're if I'm following you correctly, like what they're eating and what they're doing is doesn't scream healthy, right? Um we do it as a community type event, whether that's like birthdays or the Super Bowl or just parties in general. You know, how many times do you go to these things to celebrate somebody and you're thankful for them, but when you look at the spread of food, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to eat something, but nothing on here is great. But I think we do that as a social. It's more of a social thing, and you know, by the end of the time that you're done socializing, celebrating, you don't realize what you've put in your body and how many calories you've ingested either, right? So
Yeah,
I think that's what they want to push because it's like it's the feel good food. You know, it's like I would say it's like your grandmother baking you something and you can't tell her no. So you're gonna either eat
yeah,
part of it or you're gonna eat all of it, right?
yeah. Wow.
So it's like she made your favorite cake. Are you gonna tell her no? No, you're gonna eat at least some of it, but then sometimes you may eat all of it and then
Yeah.
regret it, right?
Oh, and just as a final question, if someone listening feels disconnected from their body right now, stressed, aging, or overwhelmed, what's one small shift in how they move or think that could reconnect them?
Yeah, I think just to you can for some journaling, kind of getting your thoughts out on paper is super helpful. That's kind of helped me over the years for that. And I say journaling. Sometimes people freak out when you say you got to journal. It's just writing your thoughts down on paper so you know kind of where you are in time and place.
Yeah,
To kind of reconnect and think about like where you were maybe 6 months prior and where you are now, and then just write out where you want to be. Because I think if you do that, you can reconnect with your mind, your spirit, and your body, and also figure out like you know how you feel, how you move now, and how much better you want to feel and move 6 months down the road. I think that's super important because if you don't write it down, you know there's no goal, there's no objective, so you're kind of just playing the guessing game there.
well, where can listeners learn more about the work you do and also connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Premier Performance TN, located here in Tennessee, or you can find me on our website. It's www.premierperformancetrainer.com.
Okay, I'll put the link in the description so that listeners can just click and go there to the site. Thank you so much, Aaron. It's been a lovely conversation.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah. That's it for today's episode of the Observe Day podcast. Thank you for spending your time with us as we explore today's observance. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share it with a friend who'd love to celebrate life's special days too. Don't forget to join the newsletter at observeday.com/join for more observance stories, tips, and updates. Until next time, keep finding meaning in every day.